This weekend, Ryan is seeing how the sausage is made, Andy discovers multiplayer solitaire, and we paint blocks as a glass mosquito or bird. We're not sure. I'm Ryan.
I'm Andy.
And this is Weekend Rental, episode 198. All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to our newest episode. Andy, how you been?
Not too bad. It's been pretty good lately.
Yeah, we're not in subarctic temperatures anymore, so that's a big win, right?
No, but completely skeptical on how long that will end up at the end of March, maybe, but we'll see about that.
For now, the forecasts are looking above freezing for tentatively 2 weeks here. So we at the very least are going to be done with the snow we have on the ground now, which is disappearing rapidly. But yes, I'm with you. Are we going to get the dreaded late March, early April snowstorm, and we're going to get a foot dropped on us? Because that can happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially when MGC is, We're going to be
the curse.
On the road traveling. I'm sure that'll happen at that moment.
Yeah, I did the whole panic ice season's ending, I gotta justify all my ice fishing equipment and go out ice fishing one more time, right? Even though I didn't want to. I was like, I don't want to. I know I'm not going to catch any fish. It's so much work. But then, part of it was like, well, I don't have to do a full setup because it's warm enough. Anyway, we go fishing and it completely slipped my mind that we've been well below freezing for over 2 weeks straight. And usually this time of year, the ice is kind of thinning out, but I didn't think about it. And I got out there and I have an extension for my ice auger, which I didn't have on it. But I kid you not, that ice auger probably sits, I don't know, almost 3 feet high. It's over my waist. And I had, no joke, half an inch left before I had to put that extension on where that thing punched through. It was just
Jeez.
A ridiculous amount of ice. I've never had that happen before. So I was like, thank God it was just deep, long enough to get through the ice. But yeah, I don't know. We did the whole thing, set it up, had a couple nibbles, didn't catch anything.
Thank God for powered augers too. Could you imagine doing that?
Dude, yeah. If I was doing a hand auger, I'd have been dead. I don't think the hand auger I had would have even reached that far. So
yeah.
But it was fun. It was a nice day. We didn't even put the house up for most of it. We just kind of drilled holes. I drove the car out on it and used that to block wind, and we just jigged. And I went to that Boyer Lake kind of between me and DL, and I thought for sure that thing's full of northern, so I thought for sure I'd catch a northern. So I had 2 lines just in there for panfish, but then I was jigging a spoon and stuff with a minnow on it. Just couldn't even get a bite on that. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah, I wonder if if they can sense the temperature change that much.
Yeah, and that might be something to do with it. You go from -10 as a high, and all of a sudden you're 40 degrees 2 days later, and
yeah, the real feel I think swung 80 degrees, which is a little bit.
I mean, it was t-shirt weather. We were walking around with nothing. Yeah, the nice thing though with that trip was I found a Craigslist, Facebook, or no, not a Craigslist, a Facebook deal. My son's been after that Astrobot controller forever. And I was like, well, you could probably find it at MGC, and that's what we're going to hold out for. But somebody put a mint condition one, had been opened on Facebook Marketplace for $100. And then I told him, I was like, dude, if you want to buy this thing, it's got the box, do this, because I guarantee you'll find it at MGC, but that thing's going to cost you probably closer to $200. So we went and met up with the guy since we were right there. And yeah, it's a sweet looking controller, and it made his day. That was all he cared about. Didn't catch any fish? That's fine. In fact, he didn't want to drive the car out onto the ice. He's like, Dad, I have my Astrobot controller in the car. I don't want to drive it on the ice when we fall through. I was like, you're worried about the controller, not our
more
impending
than your
doom. Yeah.
Your own self.
So yeah, it worked out anyway, even though we didn't catch any fish, but that's all fine.
Huh. So he's kind of like a controller collector.
Yeah, because
that's his thing.
His generation doesn't buy games, right? They play the free to play games. So he doesn't have I buy him physical games that I find on clearance for his PS5, but he's never asked for one. So to him, it's all about the custom controllers and the new controller variants, and that's what he likes. So kind of interesting.
Yeah. Huh.
But it is kind of nice now because he's got like 2 of the official like charger stands that hold 2 controllers each. So if, we want to jump into his room and play like a family game, we got 4 controllers that are ready to go. And yeah, he's all about it. I think he's going to buy another custom controller at MGC too. So we'll see. We'll see. He did just buy himself a Pokemon game though the first time. So he's finally getting into that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That's been whatever that last one was. Was it Scarlet and Violet or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
I think he bought Violet, and that's the one he's playing through. He's been playing it solid the last couple of days, which is surprising because there was a new Fortnite season, so I thought for sure that was going to be his jam. But
yeah, that's my kids jumped into that right away.
Yeah, and I don't know if like him and his friends are just having a falling out because you know how that goes with those online games. Like they hate each other for 3 weeks and then they're all playing together again. So
yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I saw Sub-Zero is part of it this season or something like that.
Yeah, so interesting. And then there's something about like a pickle costume. Like he wanted to get V-Bucks to be a pickle. I don't know. I've been paying attention. And then one thing at the top of the show I figured I'd touch on because I don't know if we ever officially announced it, but like anyway, we got an email from Cestus. He reached out and he's like, hey, just checking in with you guys. Just want to let you know I missed you. It's been a whole month without a podcast. Everything's going great. The weekend rental listeners. He says, be kind, rewind. And then I was like, oh yeah, I guess we didn't really like officially say that I wasn't going to be posting anything on X or Twitter anymore. That we just kind of went dark over there. So I let him know like, oh no, we have done episodes. I'm just not going to post on that platform for our reasons. But yeah, I messaged him on X too. Cause I was like, hey, I'm not deleting these. Like I'll be around, reach out or whatever. So, but yeah, just a reminder to listeners at the top of the hour. We're just putting stuff on Blue Sky for now. Facebook. I don't know why. Might as well just throw it into a void. And then we're on all the podcasty places. Spotify's the big one in the US. But Geekade, of course.
Just not X. It's not efficient. We're all about efficiency. We're cutting X out.
Yeah. Yep. If he can cut foreign aid, we can cut his platform. So, efficiency all the way around. But yeah, as always, Cessus, thanks for reaching out. Always love hearing from you, and thanks for listening. Sorry we're making you do the extra work of going out and finding it, but we appreciate it. Yeah. Aside from that, though, I wanted to touch on one of your topics here. We might as well get into it because I guess it's one of those things where it's old news now, but it was big news. That was that SNL 50th. So 50 years of Saturday Night Live, 3-hour special. I'll let you talk, but I'm just going to set myself up because I was like, I'll set the scene for me. I'm like, I haven't watched SNL other than like clips, for like over a decade now. But I was like, I need to watch this. This is like a big thing. So I'm looking at options for streaming it, and it's like, okay, yeah, you can do that. Peacock if you pay. I'm like, okay, that's out the window. I'm like, well, I don't have cable. I'm like, all right, well, I need to get an antenna because I need to be able to pick this thing up. So I run to the store. I find an antenna. That thing works like shit. So I have to find like a cheap booster. And then I have to string the antenna across my living room, hang it out my front door so that it gets enough signal. Anyway, whole ordeal. I'm like, all right, I'm all ready. So I sit down Saturday night, turn it on. That's not the fucking show. The Saturday Night Live 50th was on Sunday night, which made no sense. So I did all this shit to be prepared to be a day early. I was so pissed off. Like it didn't make sense.
Did it have the concert one or no?
It had the documentary one, I think that Questlove did about like 50 years of like music. But I didn't watch that because at that point I was just mad. And I was like, no, I will not do this. But yeah, that was my stupidity leading up to that. How much of it did you catch?
Well, I watched the concert one.
Yep.
Which was interesting because
that was the week before.
I don't know how far away it was.
It was a few days,
maybe
right?
Friday. Yeah. Maybe that
sounds
Friday
right.
or something like that. And, I mean, it's a constant theme here to be like looking at these people and be like, holy shit, they're old now.
Right.
Like really crazy old. And yeah, some of it was really weird. Kind of cool to see. I mean, they brought Nirvana. Kind of.
Yeah.
Not really.
You can call Post Malone filling in for Kurt Nirvana. I mean, he did okay.
Yeah. Much better than Jelly Rolls trying to sing Johnny Cash, which was, I don't know, that was an abomination, I thought. But
yeah, that's kind of honestly how I felt about the musical acts on the night of the special too, is like every act was just a weird mishmash of like intergenerational and like not music you'd really want to hear anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting because they showed a lot of people that you probably forgot about, you know,
right.
That are still out there doing that, which is interesting. But overall, it's kind of sad, I thought, to be like, oh.
Yeah. Well, you know, and it's funny too, because it's like our generation remembers like, oh yeah, like getting SNL, the musical guest, was like a huge deal for your career. But that kind of stopped around 2008. So it's like, it's this thing that I'm sure a lot of like 20 somethings are like, yeah, I don't really get why this is the music part of this is that important. But, you know, stuff for us like Pearl Jam for the first time, or like Beastie Boys or Nirvana, you know, all that stuff was just, it was like such a huge deal. Like the musical guest was almost like part of the reason you tuned in every Saturday.
Right. Yeah.
And now I guess it probably still is, but it doesn't feel like it.
But most of the time it's, I don't know, the flavor of the week kind of.
Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah. So, so that was kind of weird. The one thought I had about that is Seven Nation Army the last like intergenerational song?
I mean, maybe, and like only because they just continue to play it at every sporting event across this entire country for some reason.
That's what I mean. Like, is a song that everybody recognizes and understands, and it's the last thing that's in a stadium playing. Is that the last one? Which is like freaking 25 years now.
Yeah, because did they do away with? I don't even know the song. The da da da. Like I haven't heard that in a long time, but I haven't been to a sporting event either. Maybe we should swap Seven Nation Army for our national anthem when we do sporting events against Canada, and they'll be less likely to boo us. Good help.
I don't know if that was the reason, but
no, it might not be. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was weird that he was like last to go too. Like, what a shit position. Like, you aren't exactly the closer. You're just like the guy who has to follow like decades of acts of like historic musicians. I mean, and he is in his own right too, but I always think of like White Stripes and even Jack Black, even with as famous as he is, like they're still like underground, right? Like they were just the underground that peeked through for a while.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it was a band with two people in it. Like,
right. Him and his sister.
Yeah. Not many of those. Yeah. His sister
that he was married to. What a weird like backstory to a band, like for no reason. Like, what purpose did that ever serve them?
Yeah, we're gonna hide our marriage, so let's pretend we're brother and sister. Like that had to have backfired at some point. That looked like, oh, what's going on? You know,
so
somebody
weird.
had to
have
seen
you're in public,
something.
Right?
Yeah,
yeah. Before the days of TMZ.
Yeah,
well, they were around then, but yeah. So, were there any other big standouts? Obviously, the Nirvana one I thought was pretty awesome, and I did see the Jack White, but I didn't see a lot of the music special, I guess.
Yeah, there was, I mean, Eddie Vedder showed up.
Oh, sure.
Played a little bit. And, you know, they kind of did they would do one song that was like a tribute to an old band, you know, a cover of some sort. Like he did Tom Petty or something like that, you know, somebody who's probably died.
Yeah.
And then they would do one of their own songs, but yeah.
I listened to a great Bill Burr soundbite on a podcast where he was, because I guess he got invited to that thing, where he met Eddie Vedder for the first time, and he like went up to him, he's like, it took me so long to admit that you guys didn't suck ass because you guys broke through and took every metal band that I loved off the radio. It's like, I was so pissed off at you guys. He's like, he was the nicest fucking guy. He was just great. He's like, that's funny. Yep. I was like, yeah, well, you forget it. Everyone, it's easy to, look back now and be like, well, that's kind of weird. But like, it was like a light switch. Like once grunge broke through, like everything before that was not on the radio or MTV.
Yep.
The overnight.
Yeah, it was 1990 and then it was switched over immediate almost. But yeah, it's weird seeing him like basically being an old man at this point when you think of him like climbing around on stage and like, just being wild crazy.
Yeah, rope swings up his
short
microphone.
Little old man that's like up there singing.
That band amazes me just that they've never stopped. And like, I mean, I think their best music is well over a decade behind them, but like they still manage to get a couple good tunes every now and then on their albums. They've had some stinkers, but even that Dark Matter one, because I ended up getting it for like $6 on clearance on vinyl. There's a few tracks in there that are like still like really good. Yeah. It is crazy when you see those guys now, because then you realize how old we are. Like, they're only like 10 or 15 years older than me. That's not cool. Which is kind of how this whole event made me feel in general.
They had Cher come out.
Yeah.
And you know what? For 80 something, whatever she is.
Her and Dolly have the same doctor, I'm sure.
Yeah. Like it's one of the few times that you see like plastic surgeons at that age to be like, you know what? They kind of did the best they could. It actually kind of.
Meanwhile, though, their internals are just like fucking cardboard and like farts. They're basically like hollow shells. It's like that turkey in fucking Christmas Vacation. If you cut that thing open, it just poof, it'd be just dust and particles. Yeah, I did see that, wearing the same outfit she's been wearing as long as I can remember.
Yeah,
I mean, Jesus. Yeah. So did you watch the actual show then on Sunday?
Yeah, a couple hours of it. And then just like every SNL, it got kind of terrible at the end. So I kind of didn't watch the rest of it.
I kind of felt like the lows were more prevalent than the highs. I've heard people praise it. I'm not going to say it was awful. I just found the whole thing disappointing. I think there were some obvious characters that they just omitted. There were generations that they completely omitted. There were things that they leaned into that just weren't characters that I connected with. I mean, I loved the Kool-Aid thing. Like the Kool-Aid bit was like that when he used to do that shit was, I still remember, and you can't even find clips, like the whole infomercial, the Kool-Aid phone. He's like, Kool-Aid's phone. And he's like, oh, my custom ringtones, a bingle bongo bingle bongo doo doo pow. And it's just fucking so dumb. Like Will Ferrell's so dumb. I thought the Scared Straight skit was hilarious.
Yep.
The Black Jeopardy thing, like I didn't realize that like Tom Hanks was in, or Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks was in the original one too. And that's why they did the switcheroo. But like that bit made no sense to me because all of a sudden he was just magically part of the game and there was like no transition.
Yeah, that was weird how they're just like, well, we got to get Tom Hanks in there. I don't know. That was weird. But
Eddie Murphy playing, what's his name, standing right next to him. What was it?
Tracy Morgan.
Yes, Tracy Morgan. And he just fucking nailed it. Just like, and Tracy not breaking on that was amazing too. Yeah. I don't know. I honestly didn't think it was anything too memorable. I mean, there's a few skits I've gone back to and rewatched that I enjoyed, but I don't know. Bill Hader not being there sucked. I think there was like
Dana Carvey didn't show up to do any of his stuff. Yeah.
The Andy Samberg like song wasn't anything special. I didn't think the Sandler song was special. It would have been nice to see those guys do some more skits instead of just like one-off bits. And I get that you can't fit everybody in all the time, but like when you're like, to me, when you're open monologue-esque pieces where you're just bouncing off the audience and John Hamm and Zach Galifianakis are funnier than the bits, that says something. I also think it's kind of bullshit that it's a huge red carpet event. And when the whole show is about like a live audience, it's just like, no, we're just going to fill it with fucking celebrities. It's like, well, that doesn't really feel like what the show is. So I don't know.
Yeah. I was so Steve Martin is like one of my favorite comedians from back in the day. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and he's looked the same since he was like 20.
Right.
Which is amazing. Yep.
So like all his early stuff was some of the funniest stuff I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
And then at some point, like it was almost like poking a stick to be him. You'd be like, be funny. And it just never seemed like he was funny anymore. I don't know what it was. Like it was almost like he turned a switch that he thought it was ironic that he wouldn't be funny. So that would be funny.
I think Father of the Bride broke him.
Yeah, maybe. But he showed up today on that show and he had a good monologue. It was pretty funny. It was kind of reminded me of his past self, but
yeah, I thought it was pretty good too. Little disappointed he didn't put like, the arrow through the head thing on at least once. It's kind of trademark, but yeah, it's funny. I was watching something and because he was so prevalent in hosting in those early years that you just like, as a kid, I always just assumed he was a regular cast member, but he never was. He was always just a guest host. But like, he's got so many like recurring characters, like him and Aykroyd with the Wild and Crazy Guys, and like all that stuff is just like so ingrained into the early show that it just seems like he was part of it. I mean, he was as host, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I haven't watched it in a long time, really. Anyway, even. I thought at some point it's kind of like a generational thing, almost like music, where you like you find a generation that you like. And then after a while, it's like, oh, this new shit is I don't get it anymore.
Right.
And it's still funny, but it's just like, it's not my SNL anymore. Right.
Yeah. The only thing I really keep actual tabs on or watch regularly is Weekend Update. I think Weekend Update now is one of its better incarnations. Obviously Norm's the best, but
especially when you do the joke swap things like that.
Oh, God. The one this year was so ruthless.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah. I think it could have been a lot better, but, realistically, it could have been a lot worse. I do feel like I almost think they should just retire the show. Yeah. You know what I mean? 50 years is a good run. Maybe they do something different. Because I don't know what that's going to be once, current showrunners are gone. I just
is there another skit show out there, like even Comedy Central or anything like that?
I think most of them died, didn't they?
Yeah.
No audience based ones anymore that I can think of. But yeah, I feel like once Lauren's gone, the odds of it surviving successfully for more than a couple of seasons seem low. So why not just retire it in its original run? Like they could do something different. Because I don't even know how many people are actually tuning into that anymore. Or do they get most of their clicks from immediately compartmentalizing the bits and getting those things onto streaming? Because it feels like that's where most of it's at.
Yeah. Yeah. You wonder if, I was thinking about this, that is it a chicken or the egg thing where because you're on SNL, you become a celebrity, it's a jumping off point for that? Or is it because of the talent that you were funny got you on SNL and made you stand out in that? It's kind of like popular music now, where it just seems like every pop star is like, oh, they were from some Disney show, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely it feels like it's such an individual case thing. I mean, you have people like Janine Garofalo, you get the guy who was in,
oh my gosh, forgot about her.
Weird Science, whatever that actor's name is, I forget. Lane from Seinfeld, like all these people that like became famous, but were like half season or season cast members at best. But then you have people that have like huge runs and do really well once they leave the show.
Yeah.
But then,
and then you
like
got
Chris
Kenan Thompson, that doesn't really do anything.
Right. But then you have like Chris Kattan, who like huge, left, bombed like fucking every movie and was done. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think it's got to come down to the talent, right? Because there are certain people on that show that are just like good at bit playing, and maybe they're great stand-up or improv people, but it doesn't translate to a career outside.
Yeah.
And Sandler's an interesting case because he just like made so much goddamn money, he had to write his own destiny, which no one could get to that status off of that show anymore. Like it's impossible with the current structure of Hollywood. He just negotiated himself into like perpetual like filmmaking. That deal he landed with Netflix, it was at the exact right time that the industry collapsed and streaming was taking over.
And comedies. Nobody's putting money into comedies anymore either.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I wonder who it seemed like Pete Davidson was kind of a big push there for a while, but I don't know.
He's in something new. Forget what it is. I think he's got a new project that just came on. He voices, which we'll get into later, PD, the evil cat in Cat Dog. Dogman, not Cat Dog. Cat Dog's a whole other show. Dogman. Yeah, Pete Davidson feels like the last big one, right? Andy Samberg did good, but he also had like great collaborators and writers with him through that Lonely Island group. So,
right,
yeah, it just doesn't seem like there's too many breakout stars from there anymore.
Yeah, not really.
And we're probably missing obvious ones that were people on the show that we didn't even know about. So we're probably sounding like complete assholes right now. Obviously, Bo Hader and
when you think of like the 90s and even almost everybody on the show was like somebody like went on and did something else.
Got a sitcom, got movies.
Maybe not Horatio Sands, I guess, but
well, I guess he screwed his own career because he got healthy. Like you can't be the fat funny guy. I think he still is in like some stuff, but yeah, he's unrecognizable once he lost the weight.
Yeah.
Hey, he had that awesome. He still has the best scene in Road Trip, where he like takes that French toast and flips it up and drops it in his pants. Like, come on, that's an all timer.
That is pretty good. Yeah.
Immortalized in that role.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was something. I'm glad I watched it, even if I was a little disappointed with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they, half the people are dead anyway from the very beginning. So like, there's not much you can do.
And the other half will be dead the next 2 years. So
yep.
A lot of that cast was well into their 70s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Chevy Chase does not look like in a good shape anymore.
No, I hear he's still an asshole though. I guess he's been like very vocal about always hated those like new like Saturday Night Live projects. Like those, there's that one that's like kind of a retelling of the early season or whatever. And he's hated that. And
well, yeah, because I'm sure they don't put him in a good light most of the time.
No, yeah, nothing. No, like genius, like comedy genius. Like he's hilarious in almost everything he's done. But yeah, nobody talks good or positively about him in those like days when he was, at top of the world and acting like it. From the sounds of it.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. Yeah, it was an interesting watch. Well, we'll just tie into the one I mentioned because it comes off of that. Yeah, the Pete Davidson thing. We watched Dogman movie. Dogman is that new animated movie that's in theaters now. And I think it's streaming. And it's based on the children's book series, which is really popular. My kids kind of missed it. I think they made her read, a little bit of it.
That's all my kids read. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really well done movie. The animation style is cool. Pete Davidson, Dogman doesn't talk, so you need like kind of this like over the top like crazy person to play like the villain, because the villain has to pick up the slack of kind of the funny as well. And he just nails that. The only thing with this movie is they just hit you so hard with the depression off the beginning. So they like have to give you the backstory on how Dogman becomes Dogman, and he like falls off a building, and then they have to put the dog's head on the man's body. And then the last thing they like say to each other in the scene before this happens is like, the guy's like, if something happens to me, take care of my girlfriend. And then the dog's like, burr, 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 like take care of my ball or whatever. And then they're transformed to Dogman, and then Dogman finds his way home, only to find out that his girlfriend left him for another man and bought a new dog and abandoned them both. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? This is like right away at the beginning of the movie. Like it's a double insult because you've lost your master and you've lost your woman because you're the dog and the man. And it was just like this needlessly depressing 2 minutes of the movie right off the top that you didn't have to get into with the children's flick. We could have moved on without that. It would have been fine. So
wow.
Yeah, so we're all just like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I don't think we needed this scene. Like, we already had a completed Dogman. We didn't need to know how his whole life is utterly destroyed now.
So it's a retelling of RoboCop, pretty much.
Yeah. And then we couldn't figure out why putting the dog's head on the man's body also gave him furry hands. That didn't seem to make sense. But aside from that, good comedy flick. Evil cat tries to stop Dog Man. It's pretty funny. He clones himself, so he's got like a kitten protege child that he's like basically abandoned, and then the kitten child hooks up with Dog Man. So like there's this whole tug of war between evil guy and his unwanted child. I don't know. It's funny. The writing's smart. The jokes are quick. The whole story is exactly kind of what you'd expect it to be, but I think it was a very well done kids movie.
Yeah, my kids are obsessed with Dog Man, and my oldest, my sister took him to the movie, and when it came back, I said, "What do you think?" He was like, "Yeah, it was good." So that was it.
No rave reviews.
Nothing about it afterwards. I don't know.
He said, I guess I asked my daughter the next day.
Yeah, I
was like, "What'd you think of the movie?" She's like, "I thought it was good. Like, I liked Petey." Like, but that's the funny thing is like your takeaway is I liked the villain. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's but you ask him about like Wild Robot and he's obsessed with that one. So,
Have you played Suika Game lately?
No.
Suika Game got a Wild Robot update, and you can now change the music to the Wild Robot theme, change the background to the woods, and then change your fruits to characters from that movie, and then drop them on top of each other.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's the music in that movie is pretty good.
Yeah, way better than the shitty like 2-second loop that was in Suika Game. So big ups on that edition because it was nice. So I was like, oh, I don't have to listen to that horrible tune, because I usually was muting that game because I didn't want to listen to it. And now I can like enjoy the background music to the movie.
Huh. I still have not gotten into that. I haven't played any of it.
So. Oh, really? Oh, it's super fun. Yeah. Especially now there's just co-op and stuff.
Huh. How does that work?
Or versus, I guess, not co-op.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think our podcast, this is normally how it works where you watch a movie. I'm sure I'll see Dog Man two episodes from now or something like that. But I've watched Sonic 3 now.
Yeah? What'd you think?
And I thought that was a really good movie. The action in it is really good, and if I was 9 years old and saw that movie when I was 9, it would have been my favorite movie of all time. I think.
Yeah, the Jim Carrey parts are pretty hard not to crack up at, even if you're not 9.
Yeah. I mean, when I was 9, Jim Carrey was the funniest thing already at that point too. So
right.
If he was in that movie, yeah, that would have been crazy. And yeah, they really amp it up in a totally anime. It's just like over the top amount of anime. And there's one spoiler I'll get into that really bothered me.
Okay.
At one point for a good portion of the movie, they're in space. Just and my recollection from the video game is when Sonic's underwater, he needs air like crazy. He will let you know there's a timer that is basically to annoy you to get air. And in this movie, it completely invalidated that.
Yeah, you're right. Outside of him being Gold Sonic, which I think is allowed by canon, I think you're right. They should have been gasping for air, but they all three had exterior scenes. Now that you mention that, yeah, doesn't make any damn sense. I did like that scene where they just like accidentally lop off, like a third of the moon. And like, ooh, I was like, that would end the world also, right? Like you guys just doomed everybody anyway. But
haven't you seen Moonfall? Yeah, that's they even show it in the post credits. The moon is still struck in half, basically. It's like, okay, well, what? Yeah, that would wreck a lot of things.
How did you feel about the Keanu thing? Like, I think I mentioned how like I didn't quite feel like he fit the character in the rest of the movie and like the delivery. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, he has very few lines altogether anyway. I mean, but that's kind of what you would expect from a emo character.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Of course, and then they even have like references to that it's Keanu. At one point, Sonic comes up there and punches him, and he does the whole block like this, like Neo would in Matrix, you know? So there's a lot of meta stuff going on in those movies. So that's always fun to catch sometimes. But yeah, it's Keanu kind of does what he'll show up and do those things all the time. Like he's in those SpongeBob movies like crazy. And it's just like, yeah, I have to be on a green screen or I have to just go in a sound booth for a day or whatever. Sure, you know.
I just wish you'd have punched it up a little more though. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you though. I think this is like, I've liked all the Sonic movies. I think 2 is way better than 1. I think this one is better than the other 2. It's just like they've figured it out. Like they've figured out Sonic's dynamic very well, and then Jim Carrey adds so much, and they kind of nailed the ridiculous. They like really got, I feel like, the husband and wife characters dialed in well in this movie. Like it wasn't like, there's always been a lot of cringe from those two, like especially the male actor. I don't know his name. I don't think he's a very great actor. I'll say that. But I think in this movie, those two both like really up the game and felt a lot more in place in this universe instead of just like story delivery vessels.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's true.
And we're getting another one clearly. And Amy's going to be in it. So, because everybody loves Amy.
And maybe what do you do? Do you bring Jim Carrey back again? I felt like that was almost like what do you do after that?
I've heard he wants to come back, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, his character, his performance could probably never outlive that dance through the laser scene. Like that was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever watched. Loved that shit. It was definitely the Jim Carrey show this time around.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Who knew?
And now I guess we just wait for the next Mario thing. That'll probably come before the next Sonic movie.
Yeah, I would think so.
Whatever that's going to be. I'm curious on what is Nerds.
Nerds.
Is this a candy?
This is a card game. And it uses just regular cards.
Okay.
Just regular cards. But everybody gets their own deck. And it's almost multiplayer solitaire, competitive solitaire.
Okay.
So what you do is you put 13 cards face down on one side from your deck. Then you put 4 cards face up. And then you play solitaire. You know, flip 3 cards over, see if you can put one on. And then what the point of the game is trying to get rid of those 13 cards, right?
Okay.
The part that you can say nerds when you're out of the cards, and then you get to go out, right? And whoever has cards left in their pile, it's -2 points. And whenever you get an ace, you have to throw it in the middle of the table, and then everybody can play on all of those.
Okay.
So by the end of the round, there's about 20 piles of aces, you know, like stacks.
Sure, with strings of cards everywhere.
Right. So it's absolute chaos because you're playing regular solitaire right in front of you, but then you also have to watch all these piles right in front of the table and then try and basically snipe your cards on top of it before other people, you know.
Then I'd imagine people are like slapping cards out of the way and like punching each other and like just becomes
it kind
of
turns into that. Yeah, it's and it's one of the few games that I was just completely, my brain, it broke me. I could not I could only do one or the other. It was a pat your head and rub your belly type thing. And I really couldn't do it. I was a few beers in at that point, but it was like I just caught myself like I'm just looking at the center or I'm just playing solitaire in front of me.
Sure. Yeah. When you got to focus on something.
Yeah. It was crazy. It broke me. But
sounds chaotic.
There was a couple people that are just like out in like 2 minutes or a minute and a half. And it's just like, how are you people able to do that? Keep track of all that shit.
I hate card game or games like that. That just stresses me out. And usually just gets me to the point where I feel like frustrated because I feel like an idiot and I'm just like, no, this isn't fun anymore. But that actually sounds like a really cool concept. And I like the idea that you can just play it with any deck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the winner of the game is the first person to 100 points, and you get a point for each card that you have in the middle.
Okay.
And then obviously if you
How
have
do you know
cards,
it's your card in the middle?
so each deck is a different color on the back.
Oh, okay. So you have to have, okay. You couldn't have 4 decks. Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yep. So you just count the colors or whatever on what's in the middle, and then
so is this, sorry to cut you off, but like, is this a package thing that comes with multiple decks, or it's just you have to buy multiple decks with different backs?
They had it as a package thing, but
okay.
You could use it. You could just use any decks as long as they had a different design on the back. I'm sure.
Okay, gotcha.
It's it's something else. It's really wild to be able to play on that many piles in the middle. At some point, people are like reaching across the table and just diving for the opposite side.
Yeah, that'd be me.
Because you can play up to like 8 people or something like that.
I think that would be the hard thing with that game is like enough table space. Because like obviously you need the space to grow the strings of cards as you're playing, but then to be able to reach them is like that's the chaos, right?
Yep.
It's interesting. I Googled it quick as you were talking about it, and I have seen that packaging on store shelves before. So I was like, I knew I've heard this, but I don't know why. I think I read the back and put it down. I was like, no. It's like, this isn't going to go over well with our family.
The winner is the first person to 100. And I think each round I would score like 2 points. And then the next round would be -1 point. It's like, we're a long ways away from ever getting anywhere on my stacks. So
that's funny. Oh, it sounds crazy though.
Yeah, I was not aware of it.
We played a less crazy game in my house. So I had some Best Buy cards, gift cards from Christmas, which I told myself I was just going to like sit on until the Switch 2 came out or whatever. I was like, the odds of me being able to use this in any way meaningful through Best Buy, like any pre-order capacity with the Switch 2 is going to be like probably 0. So I was just like, whatever, I'll go see what I can find. Even though I told myself I wasn't going to pay $60 for it, I bought that Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. But that's not the game I want to talk about. I want to talk about Switch Sports, which I finally picked up because I was like, well, I've not been wanting to rebuy this, but with the gift cards, whatever, I'll do it. Because I was just thinking like, yeah, this is gonna be great. Do some Wii bowling again, good casual game. Put it in. My kids hate it. They hated Wii bowling, which I guess I can understand because we've come a long way since the days of the Wii. So it's probably a lot less impressive, especially given we have, the Meta and PlayStation VR, both of which offer superior bowling experiences, I guess you could say. So I was a little disappointed it didn't go over well, but it was fun to kind of like it is fun to have like a chill casual game like that again, where you can just pop it in and just everybody takes turns and passes the controller around. It's got such a different feel though with the Switch controller. And I think like some of the stuff just doesn't work at all. Like golf is basically an unplayable game with the Switch controllers. Like it just constantly loses calibration. You can't even get through a single hole without it just going to hell. But some of the other stuff, like the new additions were cool, like the volleyball the kids liked. Tennis still works fine. They had a badminton, which I mean, really, how much different is that than tennis? But
you try basketball? That one, it's weird.
I watched my son play it. Yeah, it didn't look like something I'd want to do.
Yeah,
I don't know. I just feel like even with, they released that thing with a leg strap and at a price point of like $50 versus something like Donkey Kong Country Returns, which they did a full 60 on. But even at $50, I feel like they're milking a half-baked product there.
Yeah, they should have. I mean, it's tough to. I mean, that first Wii Sports, those games in there. I mean, golf is the weakest one, and that still worked okay in there. And anything after that, they've never really done good. I mean, Wii Sports Resort, even the best stuff in that was just bigger bowling, more bowling pins and shit like that.
Yeah, and that came out so late in the game that most people didn't even bother with it, right? That was all just a tool to peddle their stupid Pro Sensor add-on thing.
Yeah. We played, or I checked out the Meta. I don't know if it's MetaQuest Sports or something like that.
Okay.
It is Nintendo should be on the phone with their lawyers, their Pal World lawyers, and be like, "Hey, have you tried this on over here?"
They really just
And
copied it, huh?
it's, I mean, pretty cartoony. It's like sleek, white with the same font and all that stuff. And it's pretty similar, I would say. And same type of sports, bowling and stuff like that. I will say they put it in mixed reality, which is interesting. So there's just like a bowling lane, kind of like laying
in your living room.
Yeah, in your living room. So that part's kind of cool.
That's a choice. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's a lot more of live tracking of where you are, which, I tried with pickleball, and then it was like, oh, the whole court is in my whole house. So I have to
so that ain't going to work.
I don't know if I have enough room for this.
Yeah.
The way it's intended, I guess. But
right. Interesting. That could be okay outside, I guess, when summer comes around.
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I could see how it wouldn't be too hard to improve off of what they're offering with these sports games for sure. It's just so funny too, because they've released it on like every console, right? I mean, the Wii U got a version of it that nobody cared about.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Wow.
I still think about that promo of that where they show you laying the Wii U controller pad
on the ground
and just a golf ball on the screen.
Yeah. What was that? Like, that's not selling anybody. And that's why people don't understand that the Wii U was a different console. They thought it was a tablet for your Wii.
Yep.
Idiots.
It shows the golf ball. I need that upgrade.
Yeah, that made the immersive experience so much better. It's funny. We were telling the kids about the story about how when we got the Wii, because we got it pretty early, I just like stocked a GameStop that I work next to until I went in every day and asked them. The manager like freaked out at me one time and started screaming at me. He was like, "I'm coming in every day until you give me a Wii. Like, so get used to this." And then like a month later, he had one for me. But anyway, we were telling him the story about how we had this like sweet coffee table back in the day. And like, we're doing this Wii bowling, like brand new, like first week. I go to swing and I had a can of Mountain Dew on the coffee table. I just fucking punched that thing, goes flying across the living room. Granted, thank God CRT TV just explodes off the screen. Mountain Dew goes everywhere. Like, luckily the Wiimote didn't break, and CRT TVs are virtually indestructible. But it's just like, yeah, one of my first experiences with that game. It was crazy.
Yeah, those early HD panel makers, I think they made a lot of money off of the Wii.
Oh God,
throwing their Wii's and controllers into them. Yep.
Yeah, it's very true. And that was not cheap to replace back then.
No. Yeah, I'm sure there's a compilation of just like hours of people smashing their TV with the Wii remote.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I used to work for Rent-A-Center back in those days, and I can tell you I was very good at identifying controller smashed through TV and how I wasn't going to cover it. Like, no, you can't just get this repaired, you dipshit. Like, I can tell that that's the corner of an Xbox 360 controller, and you hucked it at your TV when you were mad because you lost a COD. I'm like, does that sound right? Well, I don't know, man. Idiots. But yeah, Wii was bad for that. Tell me about Avowed. I've heard about this. People seem to like it. I don't really know what it is. Like, if a vague idea.
It's kind of like a Skyrim.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought.
Open world RPG action. It's from Obsidian, which is usually the people that do all the second Bethesda things, And every time they showed it off, I just did not seem that interested in it. Just seemed like, oh, whatever. Did not really catch me. But I guess it just hit me that I was looking for that type of game. I haven't played that type of big RPG open world thing. Go do quests and side quests and shit like that for hours in a while. So I picked it up, it's on Game Pass, of course. So I played it to that. And it's pretty good. It is one of those games. And basically kind of cliche in a lot of ways to those type of games.
I mean, I feel like if it's gonna tear away people from playing the 15th port of Skyrim, like I'm all for it. Like let's get people into a not Skyrim game. Like I don't care how derivative it is.
Right. And I think, for what it is, it's really well made.
Sure.
I think that they probably have a lower budget and a lower scope than these other games that we're talking, the things you're comparing it to.
Sure.
And I think that's probably where people are like, it's not hitting the same way, because there is a lot of the same enemies,
Sure.
You get to an area and it's pretty much kind of the same enemies. And then you go to the next area, it's different enemies, but they might be purple or something, And the map is big, but it's still sectioned off. It's not just one giant map.
Okay.
There's different sections that you go to it, different areas, and for the most part, it's pretty detailed, but it has kind of the same theme, at least what I've seen so far.
Does the storytelling at least make up for the lack in like variety, or is it that kind of dialed it back too?
It's all right. I don't know if I would say it's that much better or anything that stands above anything of the Bethesda stuff, the Elder Scrolls stuff anyway. And I mean, I guess, what do you do in fantasy, right? Because you're kind of locked in a lot of stuff like that anyway.
Right.
There's a couple interesting things that they do, but overall, yeah, it seems kind of generic for the most part. But the side quests are cool in the fact that they turn into bigger things. It seems like, you're like, oh, I just need to do this one thing, and it kind of turns into a bigger story piece.
Okay.
And it takes you somewhere else, and you got to do this cool thing. And so I really enjoy that part, kind of getting surprised by where all these side quests go.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually most of those are just like, I need apples, go get apples somewhere,
Right.
or some shit like that. But yeah, it's not as big as like those other ones. Like the choices don't seem to matter that much. Like there's skill checks that you make, like those old games where it's like, oh, your charisma is high, so you can say this or something like that, right?
Yep.
And that usually meant you got something, like you could get something out of the conversation that you normally wouldn't. But it feels like you just get to say something different, and it doesn't actually apply to anything. It doesn't give you a different outcome at all.
Which is pretty lame. And that's kind of the thing you want out of that.
Right. At least that's what I'm getting from it. It doesn't seem like it's doing anything, but.
So probably good that it's a Game Pass game and not something you ponied up for.
Right. And I think it's rather short, like 50 hours maybe, which is pretty short for this type of game if you're doing everything. I think the main story is like 15 or 20 hours. So.
Huh. Yeah, that is very small.
Yeah, for how small of a story it is, it's a pretty big game overall, I would say. A lot of options to do. But yeah, I mean, you can't kill anybody you want, like in those old games that have been. Sure. You could just go in there and be like, oh, I'm just going to kill you, and all the side quests are done. And, everything that person had to do with the story is just dead end, right?
Right.
Which I guess I never did for the most part, because I wanted to see the stories and stuff, but they kind of take that option away in this. There's no stealing things. It's the best part about this game, though, is I'm the type of gamer that will go into these games and pick up everything. And the encumbrance, the last Follow game, and the Starfield in a lot of ways too, was I just fell off of them because I just found myself constantly in the menu just dropping shit so I could pick up more food and shit, and then drop the food, and then I never used the stuff in the first place, right?
Right.
So I was like, well, what am I even doing? This, the only thing that counts toward your encumbrance is, I think, your armor and your weapons.
Okay.
And from there, you can just, if you want to get rid of them or just put them somewhere else, you can just hit a button to store it in your camp, and it just immediately goes to your campsite.
It's kind of a nice quality of life improvement.
Right. So all your upgrade materials and all your healing items and your food and all that stuff just doesn't weigh anything. So you can just pick up everything you want for the most part.
Kind of like that idea.
Yeah.
That's the part that kills a lot of those games, I feel like. Bad inventory management, right?
Yep. But yeah.
Nice.
If you're looking for one of those type of games, it's one of those.
I probably will never play that. I did play a little bit of Sea of Thieves in between last recording. And this one, so they had the new season come out on 20th, which is like Wild Hunt or something is the theme. They're staggering a lot of the releases this season out over 3 months because they didn't want to do what they did with last season, especially, and just implement everything and then try to do break fixes and have to pull things back out of the game. But this season's pretty cool. So they introduced like the Hunters Guild like has its own emissary now, and it's become like, instead of like the side quest like faction thing that most people don't bother with, you can level it up to 100 like you can with every other emissary. And then they added 2 new megalodons, one that's like electric and one that's fire, that you have to like quest to be able to see on the map, and then like intentionally go out and do like instance based fights on them. Died to the fire one. We were doing good, but just got sunk. Like, I don't know what happened, but I had to have been almost done with that. And then basically they've turned it, like some of these early missions, like it basically resembles some of the like treasure hunt missions, except you go to fishing spots on the side of the island. And now these new pieces of fish are like treasure. So you can't cook them. You can't eat them. They're just like giant fish that you stack on your boat, like loot. So it's like super funny to be like sailing around. You've just got like 20 fish like on the front of your vessel. And they're pretty lucrative. Like they pay really well for the amount of time involved. And then there's like some special like raids and stuff that have like the Hunters Guild treasure and stuff. So you can actually like level that up quick. It's been kind of an exciting change. Because it kind of is just like a whole new like section of gameplay that didn't exist in the game before, right? Like, yeah, some of it's like derivative too, but it's cool. And they're going to add boar hunting in at the end of this season. That'll be the last thing that goes in. They're going to introduce throwing spears for that. So then you'll get to do these like boar hunt missions and stuff. Pretty cool so far. It had me really excited because I don't know, like I've really fallen in love with that game. And it's my go-to when I've got like an hour or two, which is about all I've got for gaming anymore. So played quite a bit of that. And then actually right after we recorded the last episode, Fraser from R3 had messaged me, and I happened to be jumping on like the next day with Tom. I was like, hey, we're going to be jumping on like Sunday morning, like, because Tom's obviously Norway, 7 hours ahead of us. So like, if you want to jump in, and he was down. So the 3 of us jumped in. There was like these limited voyages. And then like, I can't remember how it worked. I think everyone got 3 limited voyages. It was a special like fortress raid with like extra treasure vaults and stuff.
Oh,
so we just like rallied like 2 or 3 of those, and we just like crushed it. Like we just looped them back to back. And I think we made like, I want to say it was like 400,000 gold in like less than 2 hours. I mean, it was pretty nuts. And then, so we had a blast. It was super fun. And then Tom and I did a couple more of them like later on one other day, and like in a single session racked up a million gold.
Jeez.
Like, it was insane. We even fought off like a brig ship that was coming in to like intercept us. Or no, were they a galleon? No, it was a brig. But like first PvP like instance where we've actually like taken somebody on, like won. Like I was getting off the ship, like attacking people on the island, and like we're like having to figure out what we're gonna do because we have all this treasure stacked, and I don't know. It felt good to like get a PvP win. So yeah, I don't know. I'm still really excited about the game. Excited about this new season. I'm gonna be playing some more. And if you're interested, we've decided that Sunday morning sessions are very convenient for schedules because we just log a couple hours, move on with our day. I think this Sunday we're gonna try to do it again, me and Fraser. So if you were down, you can jump in. I'm gonna get on at 8 my time. But you can jump in whenever. We'll just log a couple hours and log off. But
yeah,
invites open. So we'll see if we can get Chris on this one too.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Should be good.
The Hunters thing, is that a permanent thing then?
Yeah.
The Hunters Guild?
Yep. So the expansion to the guild and then the emissary stuff will all stay. So
okay,
it'll be cool. There will be obviously certain there's going to be like certain limited events like through the guild that are timed, but yeah, they should all be new permanent additions, which is cool.
Yeah. Well, just adding a whole other track to the game that's a big update, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, realistically, I get that it's just kind of like a side distraction thing. And like, okay, fishing's not really that different, but I don't know. It feels fresh, even though, because it was stuff that was in the game, but didn't really have much point. And now they've fleshed it out. And then they've done, the other thing that I like that they've done is they've put a bunch of ambient stuff in the game. So there's more just like random bird wildlife. There's like lizards on islands. There's fish schools that don't just despawn as you get close. There's jellyfish. Like, so the world just is starting to feel more lived in, which is stuff that was missing when you think about it. It makes sense. I mean, they put this game out on like what generation old hardware almost 10 years ago. So
yeah, that's crazy. 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think, maybe it's 2017. But still, yeah, like we're getting there.
Still a long time.
Yeah, it's getting close.
Between that and like No Man's Sky, it's just like, how did these two games that were like kind of a blip on the radar when they came out turned into decade-long games?
Yep.
It's wild.
It's pretty crazy. And I really do like the depth to that game that you learn, like beyond like the surface subtlety, is like kind of what has started really pulling me into that thing. And I know I talk about it a lot on the podcast. People are probably sick of hearing about it, but it's fun. I don't know. It's a good, fun game. There's not a lot of those.
Yep.
But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we can all do some piratey stuff this weekend. We should get to staff picks. I'll let you go first. Curious on yours. Is it a board game?
No, it's a movie from 1992 that I watched earlier today.
Okay.
It stars Emilio Estevez.
Okay.
And Mick Jagger.
What?
Yeah, exactly. It's about a guy, a free jack. It's a guy who is going to get killed. He's a racer. He's a race car driver.
Okay.
And he gets in a car crash and dies, right? But not so fast. People in the future are going back in time and messing with things, and they're taking bodies that are about to die and then using them as a new host.
I am vaguely piecing some of this back from my childhood brain. I definitely saw part of this on like syndication back in the day.
Yep. So Anthony Hopkins takes Emilio Estevez right the second before he crashes, brings him into the future. I think it's like 25 years or 18 or something like that. And yeah, he escapes and tries to figure out what's going on.
Sure.
Finds his girlfriend and all that stuff. And yeah, and Mick Jagger is in pursuit to track him down and find the free jack, bring him back to his owner,
so he can hand over his soul and become a dog man, from the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's all the same.
Yeah, it's like a more fucked up version of the Matrix almost. Yeah, I definitely recall seeing bits and pieces of this movie as a kid. Like, I'm getting pictures of it. It's wild. How's Mick Jagger as an actor?
Not terrible.
Sure.
It's funny because they have like these in the future. They have like these amphibious, those army amphibious machines that you drive around. You know, they look like a duck almost.
Mm-hmm.
And he drives a bright red one, and he just basically stands out of it too. So like half his body is just above the top too. So it just looks ridiculous that he's just driving around. At one point, there's a scene where he's chasing Emilio Estevez in a car, and they're communicating with each other. They're talking like, "I'm going to catch you. No, you're not. Whatever." And they're talking through a laptop.
Ooh, future.
Everywhere in this future, you can just immediately get a video stream of anybody else, wherever they are, no matter what. And in this one, he kept shutting the laptop, and then Mick Jagger from the other car could magically lift the laptop lid up again and start talking to him again. And it did this about 4 different times, and I was laughing pretty hard because, I mean, that's even when we can talk about like the movie that we're going to talk about on our Geekade thing, Wing Commander. So you might want to subscribe to Geekade Patreon to hear our thoughts about that movie too. It's always funny seeing like these early movies and seeing what they think technology will be, and like, but using the current technology that is currently in hand also, and being like, well, it's here, it's only going to get better, but only in this way, instead of completely changing, right?
Yeah, naturally we would want them to like dynamically flip open when you're talking to somebody on the other end. That's a feature that people are going to want.
Yeah. It's not like people are closing their webcam slots because they don't trust the government.
Right.
No, we're going to have laptops that flip open.
Yeah, they haven't built sliders into the webcam on your laptop at all. We want it on all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Can I ask why they needed the amphibious vehicles? Was it very wet in the future, or that was just a style?
I think it was just the style. They thought it was, I mean, all the other cars are like, they look like bubbles. They're just like round. Everything's round.
Future.
Little they know, the Cybertruck is the least round thing. The truck of the future. So they were totally wrong about that one. I thought about that Anthony Hopkins is in this, and he is in a lot of trash sometimes.
Especially in that era.
But this was Silence of the Lambs. I mean, this was right after Hannibal. Like, he was Academy Award winning Anthony Hopkins at this point. And now he's in this garbage.
Yeah, he's got to work. I'm sure they threw good money at him. I mean, Emilio was a pretty hot ticket back then.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of the downfall, but he was still a name.
Yep. They obviously brought him into the future, and this guy's name is Alex Furlong. Nothing to do with Ed Furlong, the Terminator kid, right?
Oh, I didn't put that together. That's funny.
That was it had to be a reference to that, I thought, but
sure. Some smart writer on staff like snuck that in.
Yep.
That's funny.
Yeah, check it out. It's all right.
On Tubi, I assume?
Yeah, definitely. This is a Tubi.
Sounds like a Tubi special.
Yes.
Nice. So my staff pick is, it's been a while since I've done a YouTube channel, but I'm gonna bring this one up. It's called Ordinary Sausage. I don't know how I found it. Just like randomly came up in the feed. This guy does the type of content that shouldn't get traction anymore. It's basically like 2 to 4 minute videos. And all he does is take fucked up ingredients, most of the time what stuff people send him, and he grinds it into a sausage, fries it, and eats it. And that's the video. So it'll be like uni or rat food. You know what I mean? And then he rates it on a Mark Ruffalo scale. Why he's obsessed with Mark Ruffalo, I don't understand. And then occasionally he'll answer the age-old question of like, what if we boiled a chicken in a latte from Starbucks? And he'll eat that. Or what if we boiled a steak in gummy worms? And then he'll do that. Like, it's just,
oh gosh,
it's just pure torture for him and just revolting for like everyone watching. But I don't know why. And he talks like this really weird voice that it can't possibly be his natural voice. He's always like, hello, welcome to, it's just like this nasally, ridiculous thing. And I can't not watch it. Like every time I see one of his videos come up, I instantly click on it. And they're all train wrecks, and it's fantastic, and everyone should watch.
I mean, there's definitely a shortage of fear factor. Like that show went off the air. Joe Rogan's like, I'm going to go ruin the world somewhere else.
Yeah.
And
we need more. This feels like 2012 YouTube to me. And I think that's maybe why it appeals to me so much. I think my favorite part of the videos too is like, there's always like if you've ever made sausage, there's always like the end of the tube where you would slide the casing on, but like there's always leftover like sausage, or there's always like leftover ground meat in there, right? When you're done. And he does a section every video when he makes sausage just called Will It Blow? And he just takes that thing and like fucking bazooka launches it at the wall. And then he rates his blow. And he always like shoots it onto a customer, or he shoots it onto fan mail box art. And it's just so ridiculous. It's such a dumb channel and I love it. And it doesn't require too much of your time, you know?
Yep. Wow. It's fun to discover something like that where it's like inside joke layered on top of inside joke that you have no idea what's happening sometimes. Yes. You're just like, this is, to somebody, this makes complete sense, but it's also interesting to see how it got to this point.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's a very large channel, which good for him. He knows what he's doing. So,
yeah. Huh.
And he's gamed the system because his content, his format, and his runtime are all very much against the algorithm these days. So the fact that it hit my feed is amazing.
Yep. Huh.
But I suppose we should do our own Will It Blow and then get on to weekend rental, huh?
If you're having a good time with us at Weekend Rental, I think you might enjoy all the great geeky stuff found on the Geekade Podcast Network. They've got podcasts about games, music, movies, and more. Plus, if you order off their secret menu, also known as the Geekade Patreon, you just might find an exclusive movie podcast hosted by Ryan and myself. Check it out over at geekade.com. And hey, if you'd like to turn Weekend Rental into a true multimedia experience, our YouTube and Twitch channels might just be for you.
So the Weekend Rental, for anyone uninitiated, it's a game for a given system we'll pick up and play. We'll decide personally if we would buy, rent, or burn that game. The system this go around is the Super Nintendo or Super Famicom. And I guess technically the Satellaview system. And this game is, you try to pronounce it. I don't know how to say this.
Sute Hakun?
I'll go with that.
Sure.
Yeah, from what I understand, it was this Satellaview game initially, which means it was like a download only title in Japan through like a early over-the-air internet style system, more or less. And this game kind of feels like it. It's a puzzle game, puzzle platformer. And it feels, that was kind of my initial takeaway, was it felt like an early like PC game, puzzle game, right? Like it's kind of got that vibe, like the simple aesthetics, the background. Like it seems like something I would have played through shareware. And then when I realized what this was and that it had come out for this Satellaview, at least I'm pretty sure that's right. It definitely lined up. It's very bite-sized, but fun. You know, you're interacting, trying to get to an endpoint of each level, like get the crystal or crystals, and you're given a few objects to make that happen. I wish when Nintendo did these that they would either give you a language patch or translate the instruction manual is my only thing, because I was on the struggle bus with some of it for a bit.
This one definitely was on that edge where you're like, I don't know. You know, a lot of the ones that they add, it's just like two options and you're like, okay, I'm in the game. Yeah. This one is a little bit more, I don't know what's going on to get to where I need to be. There's a lot of options on some of those menus and it's like, well, what does this have to do with anything? Yeah. So the crux of the game is you're like, I think you're one of those like birds that you put liquid in and they bounce back and forth, right?
Yeah, the thing that's what I took it as too, or you're a glass mosquito, one of the two.
Yeah. You suck up paint and then you put the paint into another brick, and whatever color paint it is, the brick moves up and down, left to right, or diagonally.
Mm-hmm. And the bricks can also be used as like traditional platforming blocks even without the paint too.
Yep. You can suck up the brick and place them. Yeah.
Yep.
You're right. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You just have to get to the end goal with all those mechanics. Um, yeah, it reminded me of something, and it seemed really basic, but at the same time, I couldn't think of anything that was
Exactly
earlier that
like
was
it.
quite like that. Yeah,
Right.
like placing platforming stuff. I couldn't think of anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the fun mechanic too, is like as you get into the later stages, is you realize like they fully encourage you to cheese the environment, like placing a block halfway through a wall so you can leap over that and then pull it through on the other side. Like that's all
Yep.
possible, which is a really smart dynamic. I did run into there was like that section, like that first section, like area one, like stage 7 or something, where you're given 3 of the clear blocks and no paint. I could not for the life of me figure out what I needed to do to get to the top of that one. And I eventually just gave up and then went on to like area 2 and then it was smooth sailing again. Like I don't know what happened. Like did you get past that?
So you had to like recursively like bring the blocks up with you somehow. I don't remember if that's the one that I'm
Yeah, but
talking
how do you do
about.
that to get enough jumps to get to the top? Because eventually, I mean, you can only bring 2 so far, or at least any way that I thought. But I don't know. I tried it probably 20 times and just gave up.
Yeah, I think that was my biggest thing with this that I ran out of steam on is a lot of the codes is just, or a lot of the puzzles are fixed by like layering the stuff on top of each other.
Yeah,
And that just doesn't seem like all that clever to me. Like I wanted to put all the tools together to do one thing and not be like keep reusing the same tool
sure.
over and over, kind of like building a block by block type thing. And that's what I felt like. I also didn't realize till like much later in the game that you could actually spit the stuff out
Oh, yeah,
and
down, right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that changed a lot of things. Like if I would have known that, I think I would have
So
figured out
you
a
were
lot of puzzles.
reversing a lot, I take it, with the
Yeah.
rewind feature.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot of that stuff. So, and yeah, there was a couple of jumps. Like, I don't know how else I was supposed to do it. And I couldn't quite, like the jumps were impossible.
That's, yeah, one of my biggest complaints is like your jump height is different than your object place height. So like everything's on like a grid. I mean, to some extent, like you can visualize
Yeah.
it when you're playing the game, but like to have to like build like stairs with blocks, you have to like jump up and catch it at the right length on your jump down. And it was it was a needless design that kind of was more frustrating than fun because the controls weren't that tight or responsive that was easy to do. Like I found myself like sometimes having to try to get a block placed just right like 3 or 4 times, and that kind of
Yeah.
stops
Oh,
being
yeah.
fun. Like when you're doing it over and over and over again.
Right. Especially like when you're in the middle of a jump and you have to place a block at a certain spot. And
Yes.
then you'd be like, oh, it was just the next notch down,
Yep.
and then
You
it'd
gotta
be like,
jump
oh,
up, suck it back up, try again.
yeah.
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 Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, like you said, like there's nothing that seems quite like it, but you've definitely played games that feel similar.
Hmm.
Um, I did enjoy it though. I just think like it suffers from that Satellaview system where it's like they're more micro games or you know this would feel great on a portable, but it feels sort of out of place on the Super Nintendo. Is kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, it does definitely seem like a portable game. I wonder if they made a Game Boy version of this because it almost seems like it would
It'd be perfect
be
for it.
that size, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, because the maps are very small usually
yeah.
to get across.
I could see them porting this to like a Game Boy Advance when they started getting into that era.
Yep.
I didn't. Speaking of like the translation issues, it took me well into the game before I realized I could hit the right shoulder button and view the map. So like some of those where your object is
Oh, I
off
didn't know
screen,
that.
like I had no idea. I was just like hoping I was going in the right direction. I mean, you find out pretty quick, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Right shoulder lets you do the pan the area because not every a
Oh,
lot of the early stuff is one screen, but you soon get into areas where it's going to scroll a little bit up, down, left, or right. I don't
yeah.
know about right, but the other directions for sure.
I, you know what? I don't know if I made it far enough to really see a puzzle that you really used a lot of the colors to really traverse through a lot of different directions. It just
Yeah.
seemed like it was one you're going one way.
Yeah, you get to a point where they introduce switches into the game.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like you can change and do multiple things, but yeah, it's not often that they ask you to do that. And even when they do, a lot of the puzzles I feel like can be solved with one directional paint.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you have to get super creative and probably play the way that they're intending you to.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like it was like a maze. You never ran into a maze of any sort, where you had to be because that was the other thing is you had to be on the right side of whatever side of the block you were in. That was the direction that the block would flow.
Yeah.
So there was but it never really turned that on its head where you're really traversing a deep map with that type of traversal. So yeah, it's pretty basic.
Yeah. Yeah, and the main thing it's lacking is like, what's my motivation as this little character? Why do I need these crystals? Am I saving a princess? Like, do I need the money? Like, I need
like
that
bird.
I need to know why I'm doing all this. Come on. Yeah, that was my takeaway. Was like, it feels good, it plays pretty good, but you get the gist of it very quick. And I don't know that, this for the service that it was on makes perfect sense because this is the type of thing you'd probably download, play through once, and maybe revisit down the road, but you're probably not going to get there's not a lot of legs on this thing.
Right. Yeah. And it, unfortunately for what I think is it doesn't deliver on the promise of a lot of puzzle games where you feel like you did it, you maxed it out. Cause there was always like something in the way that just kind of was finicky that you're just
pissed you off.
Yeah. So it just had that in the back of your mind. Like, yeah, I made it to the end if it wasn't for that damn block that wouldn't stay where I wanted it to,
Right. Yeah.
So it kind of washes away all that feeling.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, you're right. It didn't usually feel good getting to the end. I don't know. What do you think then on the buy rent burn scale? What would you give this one?
I can't burn it, but it's going to be a relatively low rent, I think, because there's so much better puzzle platformers out there at this point.
Yeah.
Even though Super Nintendo is pretty early for that, but in all honesty, I think I've played box pushers that are kind of they're not as abstract as this.
Yeah.
And the mechanics aren't as deep, but I've enjoyed those type of games more than this one. I don't know.
Yeah, and the box pusher thing is like a good reference too, because this game does allow you to screw yourself in the way that those games do. Like you can completely pooch your run. So yeah, I'm gonna agree. I liked it enough to say it's a rental. It's not something I'd probably want to have and pick up and go back to, but it's a solid enough, cute little game that given the service it came out on, makes perfect sense. But it's definitely something that you could probably not ever experience on the console, and I don't think you'd miss anything, I would say.
I'm loving Nintendo just being like, we're just releasing our Satellaview games.
Yeah.
Between this and the Wrecking Crew that we played.
I was gonna say, I don't know that any of them have felt like home runs. Like, give us BS Zelda already, or like that. Wasn't there an Excite Bike Satellaview thing? Like, can we get some of those? Like,
that'd be
cool. What are we doing? But yeah, it's cool. It's cool to see, the history that we didn't get to experience over here. So it's neat. And I think that's another one in the books at this point.
That is another one in the book. If you have any idea what this game even is about, maybe there's some deep story that we're missing. Was it a person a mosquito that turned to glass and he needs to capture the rainbow through a prism of some sort? Who knows? But you can let us know at weekendrentalpodcast@gmail.com or on Blue Sky. We're on YouTube. We do a live version of this. Not live, but it's recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And check out geekade.com, the Geekade Patreon, especially because we do a movie podcast over there for subscribers. And this week it's tied to video games, in that it is Wing Commander, the movie. So if you want to hear about us talk about that movie, we're going to try to.
It's a real gem.
We are, yeah. We're going to try and recount what happens in that movie. We'll do our best. But until next time, be kind, rewind.
Bananas.